Larry at LarryRicker.com, and in this video I'm going to go over how to install memory in a MacBook Pro. This is a 2012, more specifically a late 2012 MacBook Pro, and I'm going to upgrade it from, I previously upgraded it from 4 gigabytes of memory to 8 gigabytes of memory. I did that almost immediately after purchasing it, but now at this point I think I need more memory, so I'm going to upgrade it from 8 gigabytes to 16 gigabytes of memory. And I'll show you how to do that. And I have the memory here, and when you order it, it comes in a package which is anti-static, and then you can take the memory and then install it in the computer. I'll demonstrate that. But before I do, I'm going to go through a series of tests to establish some benchmarks for the speed of the computer before I upgrade the memory and then after I upgrade the memory, and compare the two to see if this is really worthwhile. If you like this video, click on the like below. You can subscribe to my channel, and please check out my apps on the Apple App Store. They include the Project Organizer app, the Project Organizer Pro, the Job Hunt app, the Job Hunt Pro app, the Opportunity Organizer, Opportunity Organizer Pro, Class Organizer, Class Organizer Pro, and the Student Organizer Pro apps. I got the activity monitor open.
Well, if you want things to launch faster, you need an SSD. If you want programs to run faster after they're launched, then you need an SSD or more RAM.
Yeah, so it's got 8 gigs of physical memory, and the memory used currently was less than 4, so it's jumped up to about 4.1 gig as Xcode's launching. I'm using Activity Monitor to monitor the memory.
But if you're going to do that, you have to restart the computer every time you do a test, because if you don't, it's going to cache it. So like if you open Xcode, close it, and open it again, it's going to open faster. Because it'll have some of it cached in there.
Okay. That's fair. So restart the computer completely between tests. Or I could just time the amount of time the first launch versus the amount of time for the cache launch, and record both numbers.
Not really scientific.
It's not scientific enough? Okay, so I got to launch in 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
I'm going to tell you how fast I want to take me to launch Xcode.
Yeah. Seconds. So I'll shut it down and I'll launch a cache copy.
Okay, I'm going to launch Xcode now. And it takes my computer like 4 seconds to launch Xcode.
With an SSD drive?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many gigs of RAM?
8.
Xcode application. This is with 8 gigabytes of memory. That took 34 seconds. Okay, for my next test, I'm going to launch a project in Xcode. Yeah, it took about 25 seconds. Interesting. 43 seconds on the second launch.
Xcode?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see to open the app what it is the second time. Okay, 25 seconds. Second time. Activity Monitor actually tells you the gigabytes of cached files.
Alright.
Yeah.
How much do you have right now?
2.53 gigs of cached files. And the swap used also, it tells you zero swapped. Okay. Excel was 1 minute 29 seconds. Okay, it loads files pretty quick. And then I'll launch Excel again. Oh, it's like 1 second to load the second time once it's cached.
Yeah. But now is it longer to load Xcode?
Good question. No, Xcode's still super fast. Like 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't have gone for more RAM power, you would have gone for an SSD.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see if it does help. What else should I try? What's a really bloated pick? Oh,
Yeah, Photoshop?
Photoshop. How about Visual Studio Code?
No, Visual Studio Code's really lightweight.
It's really what?
Lightweight.
Yeah, that's only like 8 seconds.
Do you like any JetBrains IDs?
Well, Excel would be, or I'm sorry, Eclipse would be slow.
Yeah.
Let's see what Eclipse does. Okay, 34 seconds for Eclipse. Try Eclipse again. — 16 seconds. Oh, that was quick. 5 seconds.
For Word?
Yeah.
Smart.
About 1 minute and 42 seconds. That's about the longest of anything. I think that was actually 5 seconds longer before I even started. So I'm going to go with a minute 48. Okay, before you upgrade the memory to your computer, you're going to need several items. First of all, you'll need a screwdriver. So you can have a small, tiny screwdriver and a Phillips, tiny Phillips. And then you also need a nylon pry tool. This will be used to remove the battery from the connector so that there's no power on the device before you start working on the memory. Okay, before you start to install the memory, you want to take the computer and you want to shut it down. Can't be running when you do this. Shut the computer down completely, disconnect the power, disconnect all the wires, turn it upside down, and then we'll disconnect the battery after we take out the screws in the back. I'm doing this on a metal table, so that should make sure it's well grounded. I'm also going to touch like a metal pole here and make sure that I'm fully grounded. I don't have any static electricity on me. And then I'm going to remove these top 3 screws here. They're longer screws. I'll take those out and put those over a side. And then I'll remove the rest of the screws around the base. And then I'll take the back off. Okay, I've got all the screws off. There's exactly 10 screws involved. And I recommend taking a small container, like a water bottle cap. And you can put the screws in there. It'll make sure you don't have one drop on the floor and lose it. After you're done with that step, then you just want to pry off the back of the computer. It lifts away. Just set that down. Again, making sure you're on a surface that's grounded. Grounding is very important. You don't want to get any static in here. So this is a metal table, so that should ground it sufficiently. The memory's right here. First, we will disconnect the battery. This is your battery. I'm going to disconnect the battery first, and then after the battery's disconnected, I can pull out the memory. Okay, to disconnect the battery, I actually used my pry tool of my fingernails and just pulled it up this way. That got it disconnected. Now I'm ready to take out the memory right here. It involves prying back these 2 tabs on either side, and as soon as you pry them back, the memory pops up and it just kind of stands up on edge. You can set that aside, and then below that there'll be another one. You pull back the pry tabs, and as soon as you get back the pry tabs, you can curl that one up and pull that one out as well. I'll probably need 2 hands for that. Okay, after you got the pry tabs pulled back a little bit, you can use your pry tool to just pop it up. And once it's popped up on edge, then you can just remove it. Okay, once you have it popped up, you can just pull it straight out like this. Then you're ready to put in your new memory. When you're opening up your new memory, you want to make sure you read the side of it and verify the speed. So push it all the way on the bottom, push it in deeply, and then once you have it deeply seated, firmly, then you just snap it into place. Then you're ready for your other memory bank. So before you put it in, of course, you want to verify that the speed there is exactly matches the specification of the memory that you need for your computer. For this computer, it would be 1600 megahertz, and that's the number you see on the memory. And then when you go to install it, you simply place it in this area, press it in to deeply seat it, and then just press it down on it. Now your memory is back in place. Then you can reconnect the battery. Make sure that piece is deeply seated. And now you're ready to put the back of the computer back on. and replace the screws. So when you're putting back the screws, you can do it in any order you wish, but there are 3 long screws, and these are the longer screws, and they go in this hole, and this hole. And then the rest of the 10 screws, which is 7 small screws, go in the remaining holes. Reconnect all your wires. Initial startup might take a little longer than normal on the first try. If your computer doesn't start up right away, you need to take it back apart and make sure that the connector for the battery is well seated. After I turned the computer over and started taking it apart, I realized that it was actually on because there was a tiny light blinking on the front of it, indicating that it was asleep. Like when it's in, when you press this button, it goes into sleep mode. Actually, close it, and then this tiny light blinks over here, indicating that it's asleep. You notice that I decided to turn it back over, open it back up, and realize it was actually on. So I don't need to take this back apart. I'll just continue. As you start up the computer for the first time, it's going to just take a little longer to start up and log in as it's discovering the new memory. Okay, after the memory is upgraded, you can verify the memory by clicking on the Apple and then About This Mac. After it loads, it'll open up to the overview panel. You can see they have 16 gigabytes of RAM at 1600 megahertz as expected. Then you click on the memory tab. You can see now that it's 2 8 gigabyte memory slots. Let's shut this down and let's run some apps and see how quick they start up. Okay, that's about a minute and 3 seconds. Okay, now it's cached. So the second startup should be much faster. About 8 seconds. That's whether you have 8 gigs or 16 gigs. The second startup's always faster. Okay, let's look at the startup for, well, we'll go with Word. Oops. Okay, it's about 8 seconds startup. If I start it again, it's like 3 seconds. Okay. Now the one I'm most interested in is the one that wastes the most of my time. It's Xcode. So let's take a look at Xcode startup. That's about 1 minute 56 seconds. Now we'll try launching opening my app up in Xcode, my project or my workspace. Okay, I loaded up the project. We're about 4.3 gigs memory usage. Okay, let's look at something that does take a little bit of time usually. I didn't do this test before, I probably should have. Let's look how long it takes to render the storyboard. It took about 3 minutes almost to render. That was very unimpressive. I have to review this video and kind of go over these different memory allocations. I think it's improved. I'm not thinking the memory performance is super stellar here though. Okay, so let's go with the launching the iPhone X simulator. I wonder if it held the settings for going into as Great Britain. Yeah, it's still holding English United Kingdom. Okay, so it's going to load up as Great Britain. Okay, so now I'm using all of the memory that was previously available. for this iPhone X simulator. It's using a full 8 gigs because 16 is available. Okay, that did not change. But it only took 6 minutes and 32 seconds to fail as opposed to 10 minutes to fail. So it failed more quickly. Let's see if it launches on the second attempt. Let me let it finish dying gracefully. I'm going to... Oh. Okay, it launches in like 3 seconds after it's already launched. That's quick. Okay, now I want to repeat the test of launching GIMP with 16 gigabytes of RAM. Okay, about 9 seconds. Okay, now I want to do a speed launch for Eclipse, because that was one I had done before. Okay, here's Eclipse. Okay, now let me try Eclipse a second time. That's about 5 seconds. So this is not very scientific. Variables, variation in elevation, certainly temperature, and I couldn't completely control variables. I'm running the movie editing software in the background, so that certainly is a factor. But while the results are not completely impressive, one thing that I certainly appreciate is that editing this video was a lot easier with 16 gigabytes of memory instead of 8 gigabytes of memory, because it didn't spin as much and it didn't kind of go blank on me for long periods of time as it did with 8 gigabytes of memory. So I would say for doing things like GIMP, editing images and editing video, and possibly working in Xcode. It probably is a little faster with 16 gigabytes of RAM.